So I want to start this video off by clearly stating that the video you are about to watch was not created by me. I'm just watching it and reacting to it purely for entertainment value. So if you like this content, please make sure to follow the link in the description below to the original content creator and like and subscribe to their channel and their video respectively. Again, I did not create the video you are about to watch. I'm just reacting to it for fun. So let's get to it.
I want to see, I'm interested, see what ranks for Amtgard. So number one on Amtgard for me is an open weapons tournament for Winner's Edge. Okay, how long is 36? I don't want to watch 36 minutes. Choosing a class in Amtgard Melee. That's not too bad. We might watch that. Don't particularly want to watch a sword video. It's 8,000 views though. What is Amtgard? Ooh, this could be fun. Amtgard Classes by Difficulty. Yeah, we'll do that one. That sounds pretty fun.
Welcome to Larp Academia.
So this is ranked Amtgard Classes by Difficulty by Larp Academia on YouTube. 516 subscribers with almost 400 views. So let's see what we got with this one.
And today we are going to go over the most difficult classes in Amtgard. And
all right, let's see. Hold on. Before we do this. All right, so my most difficult classes, I would put Druid, Wizard. No. Druid, Bard, Wizard. Assassin, Healer, Archer. Archer might be higher just because the skill needed for archery is not as common as some of the other ones. I think at the very bottom, I would put like Monk and then Scout and Barbar would be at my bottom, and then I would probably put the casters up at the top. I wonder, throw yours in the list if you're or throw your list in the chat. Let me see how close we get to this.
And this is because of the mechanics of the class, getting it down correctly, how it interacts with the game and whatnot. Again, player skill can make things different. There's a reason why we have paragons, but we will get into it right now. Now, the first most difficult class to actually play in...
If it's anything but Druid, I'm going to be disappointed. Druid just has so many things that it can do in so many different play styles and so many different ways to be good.
Amtgard, and to play to a decent level is the Bard. Now, if...
I'm okay with Bard. Bard isn't my number one, but Bard is very difficult because it's casting and fighting at the same time, and that can be difficult. I am shocked, but not upset with Bard being number one.
You are wondering, why is the Bard so difficult? Definitely check out our class by level guides on Bard, because, oh God, Bards.
I would say Druid or Bard first. Yeah,
oh,
me too, dude.
Leveling is hell. Your whole class is geared around being 6th level, making it work, and putting forth a bunch of effort while knowing every certain circumstance, while being able to preemptively counter with every song, and also having all your spells be kind of in the command school. So you have to know everyone else, their classes, their immunities. Again, an offensive caster is going to be innately more difficult than a defensive caster, because a defensive caster is reactionary after something has happened. So for example, I lost an arm. Oh, I just need to go to a healer. Someone heals me. There are other difficulties as well, but that's the primary source of a defensive caster. That or preemptive, to where, oh, let me buff you, and that's kind of how it is. But with an offensive caster, you are in the thick of things, arrows flying at you and whatnot, and it is more difficult to play that class effectively. And Bard is a strange mix of support and offense, but it's really more offense is where the good parts happen.
Well, and it's got a very unique skill set. The ability to be casting while moving and while fighting is one. It's kind of like why Archer might be higher up on the list too, because it's a skill set that not every class can utilize. Like if you practice sword and board, you're going to be able to use sword and board in most classes, but fighting and casting with, because every other class you have to have an open hand, where with bards you don't. You can actually fight while casting, and that's not a skill you get to practice that often.
And if you go with the support, you only need to spend a few points. You don't need to spend a ton. So it's like a confusing mix. It confuses people. It's not designed to do anything other than instantly be 6 levels. So if you play a bard, and then hopefully after the whole pandemic thing, you just got 6 level, and then you can play as it was intended, because it was not intended to really be played before then. So bard is a interesting class that's a mix of everything, along with being a spellcaster. So it's very hard to figure out how to play. In addition, your support is not just a buff, it's I'm interacting with other classes and who needs it, etc., what to do. It's a whole jumble bag of just difficulty that there is a reason why not many people play bards.
Mm-hmm.
The next most difficult class,
which is so weird. So it looks like he said bard was the most difficult because it doesn't really have, or it's the most aggressive caster. Is that maybe what he said? I feel like not knowing what to, if you want to go support bard or offensive bard, isn't what makes bard difficult. Like what makes bard difficult is the casting at the same time as fighting. Let's see what he has next.
As I've said, is the other offensive caster, like purely
Wizard.
Offensive, which is the wizard. Now, why is a wizard difficult? Aside from casting and dodging arrows and everything, you have to know the entire game before you can start playing. Then you might be like, what? That doesn't seem right. Well, it kind of is. You see, if a barbarian is charging at you and you reach down into your spell ball pouch, what spell ball should you pull out, or should you use a verbal? Too late, you're dead. So you need to have known that right away before I even got to the start of that sentence. You need to know something. You'd be like, shove, and then you have to get it off while someone is charging you, which I don't know if you've had experience with this, but when you're sitting, casting a spell on someone, no pressure, it's much easier than casting a 3-line spell when someone is charging you and trying to kill you. So
Duo says, I ran single short wizard build pretty much all the time. No board, but somewhat alike. Yeah, very true. The single sword wizards, especially with someone who knows what they're doing and are competent, can clog up even good fighters. And then being able to, like Cads will talk about TPing himself in as a wizard to be able to get behind and just use the sword to block as he goes to blow up people. Single stick wizard, especially the battle mage wizards, is definitely viable.
Oh, you also have to gauge that distance usually. And while this does apply to bard, this is more unique to wizard, where you have more options. You have more versatilities. You don't have armor. You don't have a shield. You don't have anything to keep you alive. You just have like maybe a dagger. Maybe if you're a short sword, and then you can be like, well, I got a short sword versus someone with a pole or a sword board, and we're also taught in Amtgard that means you can fight them, which is not true in a class battle game. Do not fight them as a wizard, so you have to overcome your innate nature to go and fight people with a short sword. And
you can do it.
There's a whole mixed bag of it, but you have to know which classes are immune. What does this enchantment do? Can I get around with dispelling it? Can I get around with just a different spell, especially if I'm not their level? Can I get around and hit this person if they have stone skin with a ice ball? But if I do, will that take off a point, or will that freeze them? And the answer is both, because if you hit them, then it takes off a point on their arm if they have stone skin. If they do not have any points on their arm, then it freezes them. And if it hits in a piece of equipment, they are also frozen, because stone skin does not apply to equipment. See how complicated and difficult that one intricacy was? Well, imagine that for at least 10 applications for every spell. Now, while that may be a slight exaggeration, it's not that slight. So that's why wizard is probably one of the more difficult.
I would agree. Wizard would have been third for me.
Classes to actually nail down. The next most difficult class, our third most difficult, is healer.
No way. No way. Druid is significantly more difficult than healer. If he has Druid like towards the bottom.
Well, healer is a bit more on the front lines usually than our other magic class. And of course, magic classes, they're innately a bit more difficult, since you have to know the entirety of the game, schools, how they interact, your spells, etc., which are generally more than other classes. It's just how it is. But healers, they have to go on the front lines generally to use their best abilities, and then actively use them, whether it's being an active spell ball, a little bit like a offensive caster, but really more defensively, or on the front lines and healing someone while reciting this paragraph while trying to get their keep themselves protected while trying to get their teammate up. There's a lot to healer, and there's a lot of different options that you can take. It's more open-ended and not.
I don't know, man. I am not a good caster. Like, I am not very good at any of the casting in our game, but I'm a decent healer. So, like, I instantly feel like healers can't be that difficult to play if I can play one like relatively well. I can't play Druid. I barely can play Wizard, and I can kind of play Bard, but really I just go Bard with armor and then make it so they can't CC me, and then I just fight. I don't actually play a good Bard. So like I feel like healer can't. If I can play healer, it can't be that difficult.
Not as clear cut as some of the other spellcasting classes. Bard, while it's everywhere, Wizard a little bit more complex. Healer still has the option of, should I take an enchantment or should I take a spell ball? After, of course, you take your.
So yeah, I can play Druid. I just not play it well, you know. Like Druid is just so complicated, or not complicated. Druid has so many different possible avenues of attack. There are so many different things you can do with Druid that I think it has to be higher than healer, just because in reality there are two ways to play healer, right? There is the gummy healer, and then there is the necro priest healer, and that's really about it. But there's like 17,000 ways that you can play Druid. Candy Druid, you can do the super golem Druid, you can do a pure casting, icy blast dispel Druid. Like there are a bunch of, you can bow Druid is what Dire does, right? Like there are a bunch of different ways you can play Druid,
or like healing, resurrect, etc. But after that,
Cameron says, to a newer player, most of these classes look the same in the level of difficulty. I'm just trying to get better at fighting first, then focus more on the classes afterwards. That's a good idea. Casters are the most difficult part of our game, but something that what a lot of new players get recommended, like monk, so they can just ignore casters. I would say the opposite. Your first class should be bard or wizard, in my opinion, because it teaches you how to interact with spells while also getting to fight a little bit, especially bard. You can do with a shield and the sword. You can wear a little bit of armor if you want to as well. I think starting with bard is one of the best ways to jumpstart your game here.
Should I take this archetype or should I take this archetype? There's a bit more of complications than other ones. Should I take a stun? Should I not? Ooh, it makes this complexity that while you have to make these decisions on your spell list, you also have to adjust it in the game. For example, I have a stun. Should I use it here? Should I use it later? Should I use it on that person? Should I use it on you? I don't know. Should I go up and actually be up front with shoving? Should I stay back and be a backline healer? And you may have to be versatile and switch if you're the only healer. So you have to make sure you can't die as well as you're going to be targeted.
I don't know. I don't struggle switching between like midline and backline healer. Like that's a fairly easy transition mid game to make, where I feel like, again, with Druid, it's not very easy to switch from a frontline like golem Druid to a candy Druid and play style. Like that mindset is more difficult for me.
A lot to healer when trying to play it. And the class itself has this innate difficulty built into it. And it can be easy if you're just going to say, well, I'm going to be a backline healer and just heal. But that's not all there is to the healer class. So there is a reason why this is the third most difficult class. The fourth is the last spellcasting class, and that is a Druid. Why is this class difficult? Well, you do have to go through the entire spell list, know the entirety of the game, understand a little bit of your teammates, the enemies, the scenario, and then make a plan on the game. You then plan it before the game begins, and after the game begins, you're done. You're done because you pretty much have your enchantments planned out, your verbals, if you have any, planned out all the way. And it's not, you don't have as many options in game that you have to deal with. It's not the stress of, oh, I'm on the front lines and I have to make this split second call. Should I use this spell here? Should I use this spell there? Should I change it onto this thing? You don't have those options. You generally are like, all right, it's my spell list. I have an enchantment based class. So before anything happens, I'm gonna do my enchantments. All right, my enchantments are done. All right, now I can play. What'll I do? Well, either I'll sit back, I might go and fight, or I might shoot. Yeah, that's pretty good. And very rarely do you have a Druid go and take it to an extreme length where it's like, yeah, I have some heat weapons, I have some force bolts, as well as entangles and ice balls, as well as heal, and I have also a bunch of enchantments. It's what you rarely have that in a Druid. Most of the time, they
I
make
disagree.
it so that before the game has started, everything is figured out, which is nice, but it detracts from the difficulty that, let's say, a healer would have. Now that we are done with the magic classes, my friends, we need to get to
All of
the
them-
martial classes. Again,
All of the magic classes are more difficult. The easiest magic class is more difficult than the most difficult melee class. I love it.
and magic classes are innately a little bit more difficult because they have to know the entire game, make a spell list, etc. But for the martial classes, there is still quite a bit of difficulty. In fact, there are 2 martial classes that stand out above the
All right, let's see. 2 martial classes. I'm going to guess archer, potentially warrior, just because you have to track all the armor points.
rest. You could kind of consider them the same, but I'm going to put them in a different order to make it a little bit more difficult for players.
Don't say
and
pally,
that
answer
is
pally.
that the scout is before the assassin. They're very close to the same.
I don't know, man. I would have put scout further down, but that's just me.
The reason why the scout is a bit more difficult than the assassin is because a lot of the assassin's abilities are very selfish and very
That's true.
ingrained into them. For example, do you understand what it means to be in the shadows? If you do understand the mechanics of blink and shadow step, then you, my friend, basically understand an assassin. You understand when to use them. While it is still a little bit tricky at times, and figuring out how you want to use them offensively, defensively, to get around with mobility, etc., to live, whatever, you still at the same time as an assassin are innately using it as yourself. These are very easy to get back as per lives. I mean, you have 2 per life for both of them. Your poison is infinite. And it's more of like I go and I attack, but I have a lot of abilities and I still have quite a bit of forethought to be put into it. The scouts, well, scout has a bit more going on with the entire battlefield. This
I guess, especially now with whatever they made, whatever it was, rechargeable in this last one. I would still say assassins have to be more like aware of their surroundings, maybe, where scout is more in your face, just fight them, but they're pretty close. I get having them ranked so closely.
magic, 1 per refresh, not per life, 1 per refresh. You have to know when to do that, which spell you want, which enchantment you want to dispel. If you want to use it now, if they're trying to bait you out, it's like, oh, that's a golem, we need to dispel that. It's like, oh, you dispel my golem. Okay, golem, flame blade, stone skin. Wait, what? It's like, yes, we baited you on that. So the scout has to have a little bit more complexity. They have to work with their team. For example, tracking, they might have to be in the back in order to track in a person who's being teleported in. There's a lot more to this class mechanically that you have to keep in, as well as how they affect the entire battlefield. So Scout is definitely more difficult than the Assassin in order to play. The next on our list is the Monk. Now, strangely enough, while I didn't make it a higher tier in the beginner class, obviously, you would think that, well, maybe a different class would be before Monk, since it would be, if you watched our previous video, the extra to the beginner classes of the top 3. Just check out that video to get a much more cohesive explanation. The Monk does have quite a bit of difficulty ingrained into it. While an assassin is a bit more difficult because you are presented with more options, and a monk gives you the I don't care about verbal magic, it's a soft lie, because you then have to learn a little bit about, like, haha, I have a single sword and I'm going to kill you, wizard. I've heated your weapon. I'm immune. Haha, you're dead. And then the wizard hits you with a sword and, like, you're dead. Wait, what? What? I killed you. Like, yeah, but I cast a spell on you. But I'm immune to verbals. Like, you are, but not your equipment. Like, what? What? As there's some confusion there. You have to learn a little bit about the game as you're more pushed towards learning about your own abilities, like heal, sanctuary, how it interacts. There's a bit more complexity to the monk. I would say you could argue, honestly, that the monk might be more complex and difficult to play than an assassin, but that is a debate that I
don't know. I feel like warrior should be up higher than monk, and simply because tracking 6 points on all of your limbs is super difficult. Like, if you're in the middle of a fight and there's a lot going on, I feel like tracking all of those armor points and then effectively using your AA is going to be more difficult than like using your heal and your resurrect as a monk.
Would leave up for you in the comments down below. Now, the next most difficult class to play is the Archer.
Yeah, I
Now,
agree
you're
with that
thinking,
one.
why the Archer?
Archer's hard.
We're not talking about individual
it
player
sucks so
skill,
bad.
and that's because the Archer in and of itself not only requires a lot of money in order to
That's
play,
true.
but
Good point.
you
Good point.
have these very strange arrows that you do have to learn quite a bit about the game mechanics in order to play in order to shoot your bow properly. For example, if you just shoot your destruction arrow at someone and you destroy their shield, like, ha, it's destroyed, and the warrior says harden, and the archer goes, wait, what? So you do have to kind of know a bit more about the game. It's more the lesser extent of a druid, where you would try to make it so that you would kind of prepare before the game starts. And while I'm not going to make a huge case for the difficulty of the Archer, understanding how your specialty arrows work, when to use them, and everything else does have a bit more difficulty than our remaining two classes.
I think just being an archer is difficult. Like the skill set of being a good archer is more difficult than learning heal and resurrect from monk.
Now, these last two are, well, some may say interchangeable because they don't really have a class for some people. They might go out and you could see a warrior or barbarian sash, which looks like this to them, as you ask, what abilities do you have? And they say, I hit things, because they don't really know their abilities half the time. In fact, I would say sometimes more than half the time, especially for our next more difficult class, which is warrior. Now, again, we're not keeping player skill into this. So with that little jest at you players playing the warrior and barbarian, that has no bearing on our difficulty. The difficulty with the warrior, while yes, equipment is a bit of a pain, especially armor, your abilities are fairly straightforward. They're not too complicated. For example, you go out there and it's very easy to get your melee weapons. You then fight. You have scavenge. When you kill someone, you can cast mend to get a point on your armor, or a point on or repair a broken item. Not too difficult in and of itself. The other one's true grit. Okay, that's not too difficult. Ancestral armor. Okay, not too difficult. Harden. I mean, it's what Harden does. It's pretty simple. Once you tell someone what Harden does, it makes your shield indestructible when someone says shield crushing or shield destroying. Unless it's a spell, then they get it. It's not hard. It's not complicated. A little bit like destruction arrow. Just like it'll destroy a person's shield. All right, unless they have Harden. Wait, what? Okay. Well, I have imbue shield now. Wait, that's a new thing as well. It's not going to have any surprises with a warrior. It does have a little bit more difficulty, however, than barbarian. Barbarian is simple. You have your immunities. If someone says command, ignore it. If someone throws a brown, white, or green ball at you, give me a little bit to remember that one, you ignore it. Like, okay, what else? Say armor breaking. It breaks people's armor. Okay, cool. Next ability. Fight after death. When you die, you get a fight after death. All right, that's cool. That's cool. Adrenaline. I mean, I'm not going to explain how adrenaline works, but you get the idea. They're pretty simple and straightforward. And while the warrior's abilities, and at least the warrior has an equipment cost in order to really play a warrior, and the abilities are somewhat straightforward, the barbarian is just straightforward. And it's to the point where these classes, sometimes when players play them, don't even use their abilities or forget they exist. So that is our listing on the difficulties of different Amtgard classes. Once again, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Is Barbarian actually the most difficult class to play? Of course it is, because Fight After Death is more intricate than an entire spell list and reacting to it on the field. Of course Barbarian is. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, leave a comment down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can stay informed whenever we upload a new video, and so that you can keep LARPing.
Ooh, let's go back. I like that. I like that guy. That was Larp Academia with the ranked Amtgard classes by difficulty. Pretty interesting. Cool video idea. Cool concept. I like that. So he's got a few comments here. I'll have to come in here in a little bit. I like that. That's a cool concept.